Racist bikers confront soldier at bar, but his response leaves them speechless. The neon sign flickered against the dark night, casting faint, shifting glows over the cracked pavement. Athelstan turned off the engine, the quiet hum of his truck fading into the stillness. The rusty lantern stood before him, a small roadside bar, unremarkable yet familiar. He wasn't looking for much, just a quiet place, a moment to breathe. Inside, the air was warm, thick with the scent of aged wood and beer. The jukebox crackled, playing an old country song, its melody drifting through the dimly lit space. The bar wasn't crowded. A few patrons sat scattered around. A couple played pool in the corner. A man nursed his drink in silence. Athelstan moved to the counter, his steps steady but unhurried. Bernard, the bartender, gave him a nod, recognizing the type. A man who wasn't here for conversation. Athelstan raised two fingers. No beer, no whiskey, just water. Bernard understood. He filled a glass, placed it in front of him without a word. Athelstan took his seat in the farthest corner. Back against the wall, a clear view of the room without drawing attention to himself. He lifted the glass, took a slow sip. The cool water felt grounding, steadying. His mind wandered to home, to his mother's voice on the phone, warm and full of longing, to his niece who had likely grown so much in his absence. How long had it been? He exhaled. And then the door swung open, letting in a gust of cold air that cut through the warmth of the bar. 6 men stepped inside, their heavy boots thudding against the wooden floor. They weren't trying to be loud. They didn't have to. Their presence alone shifted the energy in the room. Athelstan didn't need to look up to feel it. Behind the counter, Bernard kept pouring drinks, his eyes flicking toward the newcomers. A group of bikers, black leather jackets, tattoos creeping along their arms, markings of men who live by their own rules. Leading them was Adonis, a broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper stubble and a gaze sharp enough to cut steel. He strode up to the bar, slapping a heavy hand against the counter. Bernard poured the drink without a word. Adonis lifted his glass, but his focus had already shifted. He had spotted Athelstan, a slight nod to his crew, a low whisper. Athelstan knew that look. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't interest. It was assessment. It was the start of something. He didn't respond, just took another sip of water, steady and unbothered. But that wouldn't be enough. Not for men like them. Adonis smirked, tilting his drink as if to toast some unspoken joke. He turned to the man beside him, voice loud enough for the whole bar to hear. Real soldiers don't wear sneakers. Laughter rippled through the group, nods of agreement passing between them. Bernard's hands stilled for just a moment. A few other patrons glanced up, then quickly looked away, pretending not to notice. Athelstan remained silent, not out of fear, but because he already knew how this would end. The bikers left the bar and began their slow approach. Athelstan could hear the shift in weight, the rhythm of their steps. He could feel the tension rising with every second. Adonis stopped beside his table, stood there, staring. Nice uniform, he said. His voice carried no respect, just quiet mockery, a challenge, thinly disguised as small talk. Athelstan didn't look up, just reached for his glass, took another sip, a slow knock against the tabletop. Adonis was waiting, but when Athelstan still didn't react, the smirk on his face faded slightly. The silence stretched, and in that moment, Athelstan knew. The game had already begun. They just didn't realize they had already lost. The bar fell into a tense quiet. All eyes were on the far corner, where Athelstan sat unmoving, his glass of water still in hand. Adonis loomed over him, the dim light casting sharp angles across his face. No words, soldier? His voice was low, smooth, almost amused. Athelstan set his glass down, looked up. His gaze was steady, calm. But most importantly, Adonis's fingers tightened around his glass. He tilted his head slightly as if measuring something unseen. A slow chuckle rumbled from his throat. Stubborn, huh? A glance to his crew, a silent cue. One of the bikers leaned in. Where's his military ID? Adonis shrugged. Maybe he has one. Maybe he doesn't. Then he leaned in, one hand braced against the table, his voice a whisper meant to carry. Prove it. Athelstan held his gaze, steady, Then he spoke, low, firm. I don't have to. The smirk on Adonis's face twitched. The amusement thinned. His patience snapped. His hand shot forward, fingers grabbing for Athelstan's collar. And in that instant, everything changed. There was no struggle, no hesitation, no wasted movement. 1 second, Adonis was reaching. The next, he was flipped, his arm twisted behind his back. His body slammed hard against the table. The wood groaned under the impact. A sharp gasp ripped through the room. Adonis choked out a curse, struggling against the iron grip pinning him down. The other bikers stiffened. None of them moved, because now they understood. The quiet soldier wasn't just sitting there enduring their taunts. He had been waiting. Athelstan's voice was calm, even. I warned you. His grip was firm but controlled, not cruel, not reckless, but deliberate. A warning, nothing more. A biker took a cautious step forward, palms raised. Hey, just let him go. No need for this. Bernard, still behind the bar, finally spoke. Enough. Athelstan released him. Adonis staggered back, breath ragged, face flushed red, not from pain, but from something deeper. Embarrassment, humiliation, rage. He adjusted his jacket, forced his shoulders back, but his pride had taken a hit he couldn't shake. His eyes flickered to one of his men. Call the cops. A slow inhale, a venom-laced exhale. Let's see who's in the wrong now. The air in the bar turned heavy. Every breath, every movement, every glance. Tension pressed down like a storm about to break. Adonis stood tall, rubbing his wrist, face tight with barely contained fury. Then a biker pulled out his phone. I'm calling the cops. Bernard let out a slow breath from behind the counter, arms crossed over his chest. You sure you want to do that? Outside, the night remained still, then the distant wail of sirens. No one spoke. No one moved. Then red and blue lights flashed through the bar windows, casting eerie shadows against the walls. Moments later, the door swung open. 2 officers stepped inside. One, a tall man, his mirrored sunglasses betraying nothing. The other, a sharp-eyed woman, scanning the room like she had seen enough fights to recognize the truth before anyone spoke. The male officer spoke first. We got a call about an altercation. What's going on here? Adonis wasted no time pointing straight at Athelstan. That guy assaulted me. He's not even a real soldier. I want him arrested. Silence stretched, thick with something unspoken. Athelstan didn't react, didn't argue, didn't need to. The female officer studied him for a long moment. Then her voice, level, firm. Sir, do you have military identification? Bernard placed a glass on the counter with a soft clink. I saw everything, he said simply. That guy, he nodded toward Adonis. Grabbed him first. Another voice from the corner of the room, a quiet patron who had been watching. Yeah, Athelstan only defended himself. The male officer turned to Athelstan. ID? Athelstan reached for his duffel bag, moving slow, measured, unzipped it. Inside a neatly folded military uniform, badges, insignia, and a small leather wallet. He pulled out a card and handed it over. The officer studied it, checked the details, then a nod. All checks out. He turned back to Adonis. He's a real soldier. A beat of silence, the weight of truth settling in. Adonis' jaw clenched, hands curled into fists. But he had lost, and he knew it. The female officer took a step closer, voice quiet but sharp. I hear you were the one who started this. You still want to file a report? A warning, a reminder. False claims had consequences. Adonis opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no move left to play. The officer turned back to Athelstan. You're free to go. Thanks for keeping things under control. A simple nod, a silent understanding. And just like that, it was over. The officers stepped aside, scanning the room one last time. Adonis stood frozen, anger boiling beneath his skin. Then, with no other choice, he turned and walked out. His crew followed. The door shut behind them. The bar exhaled. Bernard picked up a rag, wiped down the counter, his expression unreadable. The male officer gave Athelstan one last nod. Take care, soldier. A moment later, the officers were gone, and everything went back to normal. But everyone knew something had changed. The bar slowly returned to its rhythm, Conversations restarted in hushed voices. Glasses clinked against the worn wooden counter. But the air still held traces of what had just happened. Athelstan remained in his seat. His fingers rested lightly against his glass, his expression unreadable. The confrontation had ended. Or maybe, not entirely. Days passed. The evening sky stretched in hues of orange and deep blue. Athelstan stood by his old pickup truck, tightening the last bolt under the hood. A simple task, a way to clear his mind. Then the distant hum of an engine. Not a car, a motorcycle. Athelstan straightened, wiping his hands against a rag as the bike rolled into his driveway. The rider slowed, then killed the engine. Helmet off, a familiar face. Cadell, younger than the others. His posture tense, uncertain. He hesitated, hovering between leaving and stepping forward. Athelstan didn't speak, didn't move. He just waited. Finally, Cadell exhaled. "I just wanted to talk." His voice lacked the arrogance it had carried before. Athelstan leaned against his truck, arms crossing over his chest. "About what?" Cadell shifted, eyes flicking to the ground. "About that night." A pause, then quieter. "About Adonis." The breeze rustled the dry grass, the scent of the earth thick in the air. Cadell cleared his throat. "I shouldn't have backed him up. I knew he was wrong." Athelstan said nothing. Cadell kept going. "Not all of us are like him. Some of us—" He hesitated. "Some of us just follow the crowd." He let out a small, humorless laugh. "I've done that for too long." The silence stretched. Athelstan studied him. Not his words, not his stance, but something deeper, something real. Then a slow nod. "Good." One word, but enough. Cadell's shoulders eased, like a weight had lifted. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he admitted. "I just wanted you to know some of us are trying to be better." Athelstan nodded again. "Don't just say it." A pause. "Prove it." Cadell met his gaze. A flicker of something. Understanding, maybe. "Yeah." He put his helmet back on, climbing onto his bike. The engine rumbled to life. He didn't linger, didn't make excuses, just gave a short nod before pulling away, disappearing down the road. Athelstan watched until the dust settled. Then he turned back to his truck, gripping the wrench once more. Maybe it wasn't much. Maybe nothing had really changed. But maybe it was a start. Athelstan stood still, watching as Cadell's motorcycle faded into the distance. The soft hum of the engine disappeared, leaving only the sound of the evening wind rustling through the trees. He didn't move right away, didn't rush to finish his work. Just stood there, letting the moment settle. Cadell's apology wouldn't change the past. It wouldn't erase what had happened. But it was something rare. A sign that change, no matter how small, was possible. Athelstan had seen too much in his life. Too many battles fought for nothing. Too many people refusing to change. And yet, tonight he had seen something different. A man who had chosen to face his mistakes. That mattered. He let out a slow breath, rolling his shoulders before bending down to tighten the last bolt under his truck's hood. A simple job, one that grounded him, one that reminded him not everything in life had to be a fight. The sky had deepened into twilight. The first stars blinked awake. The world moved forward, just as it always did. Athelstan wiped the grease from his hands and stepped back, inspecting his work. The truck was fixed. The night was quiet. And for the first time in a long while, something felt lighter. Because sometimes the most important battles aren't the ones fought overseas. They're the ones fought right here, in minds and choices, in the way people decide who they want to be. Athelstan stood in the quiet, watching until the last trace of dust from Cadell's bike faded into the dusk. The wind carried the scent of dry earth and distant pine, rustling through the trees in a slow, steady rhythm. He turned back to his truck, wiping his hands against a rag. Work to do. Life to keep moving forward. But this time, something felt different. Cadell's words wouldn't change the world. They wouldn't undo what had been done. But they meant something. Because change never starts with a crowd. It starts with one person, one choice, one moment. And tonight, Cadell had made his. Athelstan finished his work as the last of the daylight slipped beyond the horizon. He straightened, exhaling slowly, letting the night settle around him. A sky full of stars stretched overhead, indifferent and eternal. He had no expectations, no need for closure, but maybe, just maybe, one less person would make the same mistake tomorrow. And that was enough.